Good day, my friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Daily Torah Broadcast, a ministry of the Messianic Discipleship Institute. Remember, you can always visit us online at mymdi.org and download previous episodes of the Daily Torah Podcast. If you're not a Daily Torah channel subscriber, click the subscribe button so you never miss a single episode. Today we are on day 1 of this week's Daily Torah series called Matot, which means tribes. This is actually a double Torah portion this week, which combines Parashat Matot and Masei, which means journeys, to finish out the book of Numbers. Yesterday we discussed God's instructions on how Yeshua fulfills each of the holy days. And today our Torah portion opens with laws about vows and swearing of oaths. If you have your Bibles and notepads handy, get them ready or listen and review later. But let's pick up the story in Numbers chapter 30, beginning in verse 1. In Numbers chapter 30, verse 1, we read, "Then Moses spoke to the heads of the tribes concerning the children of Israel, saying, This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. If a man makes a vow to the Lord or swears an oath to bind himself by some agreement, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth." Now, my friends, this instruction was given to the leaders of the tribes of Israel for them to communicate to all the others in Israel. A vow made to God is no small thing. God commanded that his people should be careful to keep their vows and to fulfill every oath they made. And Psalm 15, verse 4, describes the godly man as the one who swears to his own hurt and does not change. Now, my friends, vows either took the form of a promise to give something to God, usually a sacrifice or a pledge to abstain from something. Some people believe, usually based on Matthew chapter 5, verses 34 through 37, which is actually our Brit Hadashah portion for today, that vows or oaths are not permitted for God's people today. But what Yeshua said in the Sermon on the Mount regarding oaths was an emphasis on truth-telling and honesty, not an absolute prohibition of every oath. The Bible shows us that oaths are permitted under certain circumstances if they are not abused and used as a cover for deception. God himself swears oaths. In Hebrews chapter 6, verse 13, in Luke 1, verse 73, we read that Yeshua spoke under oath in a court. That's recorded in Matthew chapter 26, verses 63 and 64. Paul made oaths in Romans 1, verse 9, 2 Corinthians 1, verse 23, Galatians 1, verse 20, and 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 5, and you can look those up on your own. I just don't have time to go through each of those today. But there are many accounts of vows being made by people in the Bible, sometimes in a plea for God's help, but the common tendency and what God is cautioning here is when you make a vow and when the crisis passes and the prayer is answered, there is a temptation to forget the vow. Because God holds us to account for the vows that we make, sometimes it's better not to make a vow, as Solomon cautions us in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 4 and 5. Now, my friends, a commonly overlooked and unappreciated sin among God's people is the sin of broken vows, promising things to God and failing to live up to the vow. Under the Old Covenant, it was commanded to make an offering to atone for the breaking of vows. We read about that in Leviticus chapter 5, verse 4. Therefore, those who honor God will, 1, not be quick to make vows to God, especially unwise vows. 2, be serious about fulfilling vows that they do make. And 3, regard broken vows as sins to be confessed and to be repented of. Now, continuing in verse 3 of Numbers, we read, or if a woman makes a vow to the Lord and binds herself by some agreement while in her father's house in her youth, and her father hears her vow and the agreement by which she has bound herself, and her father holds his peace, then all her vows shall stand, and every agreement with which she has bound herself shall stand. But if her father overrules her on the day that he hears, then none of her vows nor her agreements by which she has bound herself shall stand, and the Lord will release her because her father overruled her. Now, my friends, this command refers to a woman who is young and unmarried, still living with her parents while in her father's house, and the vows of this young woman in such circumstances were subject to review or approval by her father. He could approve of her vow by silence, with silence being understood as agreement. Women were able to make vows and have a direct dealing with God. Even young women, with the approval of their father, could make promises to God, vow offerings to him, or pledge seasons of self-denial to the Lord. The father of a young woman also had the right to disapprove of his daughter's vows and to declare the vow invalid. Now, continuing in verse 6, we read, if indeed she takes a husband while bound by her vows or by a rash utterance from her lips by which she bound herself, and her husband hears it and makes no response to her on the day that he hears, then her vow shall stand, and her agreements by which she bound herself shall stand. But if her husband overrules her on the day that he hears it, he shall make void her vow which she took and what she uttered with her lips, by which she bound herself, and the Lord will release her. Now, my friends, if indeed she takes a husband, suggests that the woman might have made a vow when she was living with her in her father's house, and then subsequently has become married. That she might be released from such a vow is greatly liberating both to her and to her husband. He might not want to take on an obligation that she has entered into before they were married. This, my friends, is a protective clause given to us by God. Likewise, if a husband hears the vows and objects, he has the right to overrule her. God considered the wife released from such disapproved vows. The husband, as the male authority figure in the relationship, may choose from several courses of action. Number 1, permit the vow or oath to remain in effect by default by taking no action. Number 2, negate the obligation. Or number 3, affirm the commitment by word or deed. Now, continuing in verse 9, we read, also any vow of a widow or a divorced woman by which she has bound herself shall stand against her. Now, here the case of a woman who was neither in her father's house nor married was considered. That the widow and the divorced woman have the same status regarding the making of vows is significant. Some people claim that divorce in biblical times was only a certain legal fiction, that the woman was always to be considered the wife of the husband who had dismissed her. Yet this verse clearly indicates that a divorced woman has the legal status of one who is who is a widow. She has become an independent agent. Like the widow, her former husband is in a sense dead to her. My friends, such vows made by a woman not living with her parents and not married to a husband were considered binding. These laws, my friends, given to us by God are still standing today. In His eyes, nothing has changed. This is a topic not discussed very much. So it's good for us to discuss this today and to have this understanding in your walk with the Lord. Now let's review our half-Torah portion in Jeremiah chapter 1, and we'll be reading verses 1 through 3. So in Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 1, we read, "The words of Jeremiah, the sons of Hilkiah, of the priests who were in Anathoth in the land of Benjamin, to whom the word of the Lord came in the days of Josiah, the son of Amon, king of Judah, in the 13th year of his reign. It came also in the days of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, until the end of the 11th year of Zedekiah, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, until the carrying away of Jerusalem captive in the 5th month." Now, my friends, this begins a remarkable collection of writings revealed through the prophet Jeremiah. His 40-year ministry was a tremendous display of faithfulness and courage in the face of great discouragement, opposition, and small results. Since Jeremiah was from a priestly family, it made sense that they lived in Anathoth, which was a small village about 3 miles from Jerusalem. It was in the land of Benjamin, but given over as a priestly city. Now, throughout this week, we will go deeper into one of the greatest prophets in the Bible and how this half-Torah portion relates to our Torah portion for this week. And now let's look at our Brit Hadashah portion. Let's get into this for today in Matthew chapter 5, which I alluded to earlier. In Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 through 37, Yeshua says, "Again you have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to the Lord.' But I say to you, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Nor shall you swear by your head, because you cannot make one hair white or black, but let your yes be yes, and your no, no, for whatever is more than these is from the evil one." Now, my friends, as we mentioned earlier, some people believe, based on these verses, that vows or oaths are not permitted for God's people today. But what Yeshua is emphasizing here is on truth-telling and honesty, not an absolute prohibition of every oath. The Bible shows us that oaths are permitted under certain circumstances if they are not abused and used as a cover for deception. This is why, my friends, we have to look at the whole Bible and just not pick bits and pieces and believe a doctrine or command has been changed. Yeshua and the Father are one and are the same yesterday, today, and forever. What God and the Father are looking for from us is that we be very, very careful that we do not rashly utter something that it becomes a vow or an oath that we cannot keep. So what Yeshua is saying, it's better for us to just let our yes be yes and our no be no. So my friends, let's end it here for today. Take some time to meditate on these words and how they apply to your life. Pray for us in this message to go out, and pray for those who are scattered throughout the world seeking their Messiah, so that they will return to the Torah in their Hebraic roots. Share this message with your friends and family. Post a link on your social media pages and help us spread the gospel. You never know whose life you may affect. Remember to visit us at mymdi.org. Take one of our free classes. Download the Daily Torah schedule. You can also order some of our books there. And if the Lord inspires you, please consider becoming a monthly sponsor so we can reach more people with these messages. Just click the giving menu option or donate button on the website. Tomorrow, we will get deeper into this series. And until then, Shalom Aleichem, blessings and shalom, my friends.